What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering. I hope you're having a wonderful day. If you are, smash that like button. Leave a comment down below. Got a great story here around The Witcher on Netflix. Now, the show is not without its problems, including, but not limited to, some swapping of original characters for diversity, which is a divisive issue amongst hardcore fans, as well as the showrunner and many of the people who work on the show, the typical Netflix stock of people. But the show that came out, I thought, was above average, worth a watch, especially if you're not paying for it. But I do think that season 2 will be an improvement on season 1. They'll learn what worked, they'll learn what didn't work, and then they'll do better, hopefully. Obviously, Netflix is putting a lot of stake into this, a huge budget, and they're hoping that it's their Game of Thrones. I don't think it will ever be like that, but I think the show is doing a good enough job world building that you don't necessarily have had to read the books. You don't necessarily have had to read or play the game to enjoy the show. My wife watched it. She liked Game of Thrones, and I just filled in some of the gaps along the way, but it wasn't even really necessary. We saw the first round of reviews come out on Friday, 12/20, and there was a lot of really scummy reviews in there. People that literally admitted to skipping episodes, giving the show an F rating, and then that was getting picked up by Rotten Tomatoes. And as of the Friday, if I remember correctly, it was right around the high 50s in terms of critic score. If we fast forward now here till Monday, 12/23, it's at 57% with 44 critics, 92% fan score. Now, we see this with the Star Wars, or oftentimes when you see a low critic score but a high fan score, I can usually attribute that to fan service or to something that's probably still worth a watch. Because if the people liked it, that's far more important than lazy critics writing it, who literally, from Entertainment Weekly, admitted to skipping episodes. Some of the negative reviews, Chris and Baldwin. So yeah, this is some high school level D&D roleplay with a multi-million-dollar budget. F. Really? I mean, it's like, would you have somebody review this that hates sci-fi and fantasy? And there are people in this full review. It's like Netflix Witcher is terrible. And then you have going on Darren saying, you know, Chris and I have a confession. I'm a member of the Henry Cavill Appreciation Society. The big super Brit was a deadpan delight in the goofball Spy Fest, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and the brilliantly lumen tower of the most recent Mission Impossible. But then you have ridiculous takes by the same guy. Because life is too short for Netflix drama running times, I skipped ahead to the 5th episode, which brings the Yennefer and Geralt plot lines together. Episode 5 also features magic Viagra and a masked hookup scene set to some truly ridiculous retro softcore music. I do think there's room for mature content in the fantasy romp in our post-Game of Thrones universe, but the external exposition runs alongside a tin ear for dialogue. Grade F. You are paid to review things. You admit in your review that you skipped half of the show and you gave it an F. Why even... Look, if you just really hated it that bad, why don't you just skip reviewing it? Why don't you pass? Because clearly you can't provide an objective review. And we talk about this so often about all I want is objective reviews. I don't want, you know, I like this because it has a strong female character, so I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 even though it shows a 4 out of 10. Why do you give it an 8 out of 10 and not show your rear? And why not show, you know, why not pretend to be, you know, a professional for once in your life? Now, if we look at Metacritic, which I now use alongside of Rotten Tomatoes, the Metascore is right around the same, 53, but the user score is a 75. So you have The Witcher, Rotten Tomatoes review score, 6,700 reviews, 92%. And on Metacritic, you've got, what, about 2,000 reviews, and you're at 75. If you average them out, it's probably like mid 80s, mid to low 80s if you figure all that out. Now, is the show a 10? No. Is it a 1? No. I think that I respect people who just don't want to give Netflix their money. I understand that. I respect people that don't want to, reward Lauren Hissrich, who has had some truly horrible takes on Twitter in the past. I get that, and I respect that. Watch what you want to watch. But I've got to respect her clapback. According to Cinema Blend, when fans have your back, you can face anything. The Witcher showrunner Lauren Schmidt Hissrich is learning that. As fans enjoy the 8 episodes of The Witcher Season 1, over at Rotten Tomatoes, Netflix's The Witcher has a rotten but barely score of 58% from critics with an enthusiastic 91% critic score. It's actually improved since there. It's at 92. So Rotten Tomatoes can change that percentage. So as we showed in our review roundup, most critics found something positive to say amidst constructive criticism. However, the folks at the EW, Entertainment Weekly, tag teamed the review of The Witcher and gave it an F. One critic planned to review the show but only watched half an hour of the premiere before asking for backup. The two critics mostly ripped into the series apart in a back and forth. One critic at the EW said he skipped ahead to the 5th episode. Critics not even watching all 8 episodes before giving an F grade really upset a lot of fans. The Witcher showrunner, Lauren S. Hissrich, responded to the reviews throwing some winking shade on that particular F without mentioning the outlet, going on to say, "Many people have sweetly written me upset about The Witcher reviews. Know this. Who do I care about? Quote, professional critics who watched 1 episode and skipped ahead, or real fans who watched all 8 in one day and are starting their rewatch? I'm thrilled. The fans are a priority, as they should be, especially since The Witcher showrunner has talked about aiming for 7 or 20 seasons. More than one that's already out and already begun in the planning stages of season 2. A show can be beloved by critics and die after 1 season, but a show that is beloved by fans can go on and on." That's very true. The fans greatly outnumber the critics by orders of magnitude. And, critics watch the show for free anyway. They're not watching any of the ads that these networks are selling. They're not paying for a Netflix subscription for a particular show. They're not renewing that subscription to stay on and watch The Witcher. They're just doing nothing. That's not to say all critics are evil, and anyone who says anything negative about the show is a bad guy. Constructive criticism is fair game, as Lauren Hissrich tweeted. Quote, "Now, I hope this doesn't mean you're ignoring constructive criticism because the show can be improved." To which she replied, "Never. Constructive criticism is great. Dumpster fires are not." Very true. Sometimes people gleefully feed off hate, like everyone ripping apart the Cats movie. And hey, at least The Witcher hasn't had a Game of Thrones coffee cup style error yet. They almost did in season 1, but caught it in time. That's the last time we should compare The Witcher to Game of Thrones, though, since the show has had enough of that. Still, the point is that they worked hard to make something, and show season 1 is already a hit for millions of fans. Look, would I say that I would that I would tell people right now to pay Netflix money to watch this show? No. Do I think the show is good if you already have a subscription? Yeah. Do I think if you have, a friend who has a Netflix account or another way to watch it? Yeah. I think that season 1 did enough to warrant my interest in season 2. I'm not like dancing around waiting for it like maybe I was during The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones early on, but I'm just not that way about TV anymore. I've been disillusioned in a lot of ways by the Hollywood mentality and being, exposed to, a lot of these directors and their shows, their staff, hidden agendas. And yeah, a lot of you said that the show had some pretty clear, I'm a woman, men don't think I can do this thing, so I'm going to do it moments. And yeah, it did have a little bit of that. But look, it's modern day television and movies. If you look for it, if you go into a movie, the one piece of advice I could offer people is that it's absolutely okay to look at movies and be critical of them and to watch for things. For example, when I watched Deadpool, the second one, there were a couple of weird, kind of SJW moments where you weren't quite sure if they were poking fun or if they were being preachy. And, it kind of colored my enjoyment of that movie. And my wife was like, dude, just enjoy the movie. You know, if you want to pick it apart later, rewatch it and do it at that time. But you should enjoy it because you're paying $15 for it, or 50 when it's our case, because, you know, 2 tickets plus popcorn plus it's icy. You know what? I started to take her advice, and I'm not to say that it's not to say that you should ignore it, but if you're going to commit time to it, you know, I think giving a few passes out is reasonable. Now, if the show goes ridiculous levels of woke, then skip it. That's okay. There's so much entertainment out there, whether it's movies or it's your favorite YouTuber or whatever the case may be. But it'll be interesting to see how the show shakes out in season 2. Clearly, critics have panned it. Granted, only 44 critics reviewed it, but, you know, it was overwhelmingly pretty negative. Nobody really had overwhelmingly positive things to say about it. I don't know if that's tied to Henry Cavill's kind of woke statements about the Me Too movement. Don't be surprised if a few critics remember that he kind of poo-pooed it. And we know that critics are not above being unprofessional and giving a show a negative score because they don't like a particular actor or something like that. You know, I don't know if it's that they just, you know, they don't want it because it's a poor man's Game of Thrones. I don't know if they gave him negative reviews because gamers like the show. These are all reasonable possibilities, as we know that paid critics are absolutely not above being petty and hacks. So, hey, I give the showrunner, I may disagree with her on a lot of her SJW stuff, but I give her credit for standing up for her show and understanding that the fans are the ones that will keep your show on the air and not the critics. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.